guys, welcome to my channel. Today, I'll be coaching you on how to fill out the Affidavit of Support under Section 213A of the INA, which is Form I-864, expires on October 31st, 2021. So let's take a look over here. This part, we are not going to fill out this part because this part is for USCIS use only. Since we are not going to fill out this part, we are going to start from here. But before I start, I would like to remind you guys to type or print in black ink only. Or if you are going to use pen to fill out this form, make sure to use black ink pen only. And lastly, do not leave the boxes empty. If the boxes is not applicable for you, write an A. So let's move forward in part 1, basis for filing affidavit of support. So in this part, you are going to write down the person name who is filing the affidavit of support for you. So in my part, I write down my husband's name here because he is the one who is filing the affidavit of support for me. If you have a co-sponsor or a joint sponsor, your co-sponsor or joint sponsor must write down their name in this space provided. I am the sponsor submitting this affidavit of support because select only one box. So in this part, the person who is filing out the affidavit of support for you must take one of the boxes that is applicable for them. So in my part, I take 1A because my husband is my petitioner and he is filing out this form for me and for my derivative. Note, if you are filing this form as a sponsor, you must include proof of your U.S. citizenship, U.S. national, or a local permanent resident status. So in this part, you have to provide the proof that you are a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or a local permanent resident. So in my part, my husband provided a photocopy of his passport and a photocopy of his birth certificate proving that he is a U.S. citizen. Part 2, information about the principal immigrant. So in this part, the petitioner or the sponsor must provide the information of a principal immigrant. So in my part, I write down my name here because I am the principal immigrant. Mailing address. In care of name, I write down my name here so that when the USCIS send me the mail, they are going to address that mail in my name. This is my street number, my city or town, my state is Texas, my zip code, country is United States. Other information, country of citizenship or nationality. So this is my country, Philippines. Date of birth, I was born on July 1st, 1987. Alien registration number or A number. This is my alien registration number. USCIS online account number. I write an A in here because I don't have a USCIS online account number. But if you have a USCIS online account number, you have to provide the information of that account number in this space provided. Date and telephone number. This is my mobile number. So let's move forward in part 3. Information about the immigrants you are sponsoring. Number 1, I am sponsoring the principal immigrant name in part 2. In this part, I think yes because my sponsor is sponsoring me. But if you are sponsoring or the sponsor is sponsoring the family member that was listed in part 3 as a second joint sponsor, or if the sponsor is sponsoring family members who are immigrating more than 6 months after the principal immigrant, they have to take no because they are not sponsoring the principal immigrant that was listed in part 2. They have to take no, okay? Number 2, I am sponsoring the following family members immigrating in the same time or within 6 months of the principal immigrant named in Part 2. So in this part, in number 2, I take number 2 because my petitioner or my sponsor is sponsoring me together with my derivative applicant or K2 who came with me in the same time. Number 3, I am sponsoring the following family members who are immigrating more than 6 months after the principal immigrant. So in this part, I leave it blank because my husband is not sponsoring a family member who are immigrating more than 6 months after I arrive here in the United States. But if you have a K2 or derivative that is still there outside the United States or in the Philippines and you are planning to get them after 6 months of your arrival here in the United States, then you have to take number 3. Family member 1. This is my family member or my derivative applicant. Relationship to the principal applicant, she is my daughter. Date of birth, she was born on July 15, 2008. Alien registration number, she does not have an alien registration number because she is my derivative or K2. A K2 does not have an alien registration number or A number. So I write in A in here. USCIS online account number, I write in A because she does not have a USCIS online account number. From family member 2 to family member 3, family member 4, and family member 5, I write in A because I only have one family member and that is my derivative. So I write in A in this space provided. But if you have more than one family member or derivative or K2, you have to write down their information in this space provided. In Part 5, Sponsors Household Size. Note, do not count any members of your household more than once. Person you are sponsoring in this affidavit. Number 1, provide the number you entered in Part 3, item number 29. So in this part, you are going to provide the number you have entered in Part 3, item number 29. So let's take a look what number I have provided in Part 3, item number 29. So in Part 3, item number 29, I provided number 2, that is me and my daughter. So I'm going to write down that number in Part 5, item number 1. I'm going to write down 2 in here. Person not sponsored in this affidavit. So in this part, you are going to write down the number of the person that is not included or that is not sponsored in this affidavit. So in number 2, you have to write down the petitioner or the sponsor in this space provided. So in this part, I'm going to write down 1 for my petitioner. If you are currently married, enter 1 for your spouse. So I entered 0 in here because in the note, do not count any member of your household more than 1. So since I already count myself in here as a principal applicant in my derivative or K2, I'm not going to write down my name in here. I am the spouse. I am not going to write down here because I will only count myself once. So I write 0. Do not forget, do not count yourself twice in your household. Okay? If you have dependent children, enter the number here. So in this part, my husband does not have any children, so I write 0 in this space provided. But if your petitioner or your sponsor has a children from the previous marriage, then you have to write down the total of the children that he has. Number 5, if you have any other dependents, enter the number here. In this part, I entered 0 because we don't have any other dependents aside from me and my daughter. So I write 0 in here. If you have sponsored any other person in Form I-864 or Form I-864 EZ who are now local permanent residents, enter the number here. So in this part, I entered 0 because my petitioner did not sponsor any other individual who is now a local permanent resident. So I put 0. But if your petitioner has sponsored an individual before who is now a local permanent resident, you must write down the total number of that individual in this space provided. Number 7, optional. If you have siblings, parents, or adult children with the same principal residence who are combining their income with yours by submitting Form I-864A, enter the number here. So in this part, I entered 0 because my petitioner does not have a parent, sibling, or children who are combining their income with my petitioner. So I write 0. Add together part 5, item number 1 to 7, and enter the household number. So in this part, you are going to add from part 5, number 1 to 7. So in part 5, 1, 2, 7. So let's count. In this part, I write 2. So it's 2. Number 2, my husband is 1. And then in this part, they are 0. So I will write down the total household size is 3, including me, my daughter, and my husband. Part 6 is sponsor employment and income. I am currently, so my petitioner is currently employed and he is an electrician. So I will write the job in this space provided. Employer name, so my petitioner employer name is local 25. So I'm going to write down the local 25 in this space provided. Employer number 2 if applicable. So my husband does not have other employer aside from the local 25. So I will write NA in this space provided. Number 2, self-employed as an occupation. So in this part, my husband is not self-employed. So I will write NA in this space provided. Unfortunately, my computer is not allowing me to write in here. So I will use black ink pen to write down NA in this space provided. Number 5, retired since. So since my husband is not retired yet, I will leave it blank. And I will write NA in this space provided. Number 6, unemployed since. So since my husband is employed, I will leave it blank as well. And I will write NA in this space provided. My current individual annual income is, my husband's current individual annual income is $95,000 US. Income you are using from any other person who was counted in your household size, including certain condition, the attending immigrant, Form I-64 instruction. Please indicate name, relationship, and income. So in this part, since we did not have any individual who are combining, in number 7, their income with my petitioner, so I write NA in this space provided. But if you have the individual in number 7 who are joining their income with the petitioner, you have to write down that individual name in this space provided, their name, their relationship with you, in that individual current income. So in my part, we don't have that. So from person 1 to person 3, person 4, I write NA. So in item number 20, my current annual household income. Total all lines from part 6, item number 7, 10, 13, 16, and 19. The total will be compared to Federal Poverty Guidelines and Form I-864P. So in this part, you are going to total the sponsor annual income in part 6, item number 7, 10, 13, 16, and 19. So let's take a look at these items. So part 6, item number 7. So in item number 7, I have $95,000 US, which is my sponsor annual income or my petitioner annual income. In item number 10, I write NA. Item number 13, I write an A. Item number 16, I write an A. And item number 19, I write an A. I write an A because we do not have an individual who are joining their income in our household, or we are not using any other person's income who was counted in our household. So I write an A. Since there was no one listed in item number 10, 13, 16, and 19, I am going to write down the income in item number 7, which is 95,000 US dollar. But if you write or listed an individual in this space provided, you have to write down the current income, the name, the relationship, current income of that individual in this space provided. And you have to total the item number 7, which is 95,000, in the current income of that individual that you have written in this part. Then you have to write down the total in this space provided. So in my part, since we do not have an individual listed in this part, only in item number 7, then I'm going to write down 95,000 in this space provided. 21. The people listed in item number 8, 11, 14, and 17 had completed form item I-864A. I am filing along with this affidavit all necessary form I-864A is completed by these people. So let's take a look on this item, 8, 11, 14, and 17. So on item number 8, I write an A. Number 11, I write an A. Number 14, I write an A. Number 17, I write an A because we do not have an individual that is joining their income in our household, and we are not using any other person income that was counted in our household, because our household just consists me, my husband, and my daughter. And since my husband did not listed me in this part, then I am going to skip this part, okay? But if you have an individual listed in this part, then you have to take number 21, okay? Number 22, one or more of the people listed in item number 8, 11, 14, and 17 do not need to complete form item 864A because he or she is the intending immigrant and has no accompanying dependents. So in this part, I skip this one because my husband did not listed me in this part, okay? But if your husband listed you in this part in your current income, then you have to write your name in this space provided, okay? Federal Income Tax Return Information. 23A, have you filed the federal income tax return for each of 3 most recent tax years? So in this part, since my sponsor filed his most 3 recent tax years, I think yes. But if your sponsor did not file these 3 most recent tax years, then you have to think no. Note, you must attach photocopy or transcript of your federal income tax return for only the most recent tax years. So in this part, you are going to attach a photocopy or transcript of your sponsor federal income tax return only the most recent tax years, okay? Number 23B, this is optional. I have attached photocopies or transcripts of my federal income tax return for my 2nd and 3rd most recent tax years. So since my husband attached a copy of the transcript of his 2nd and 3rd most recent tax years, I take this box. But if your petitioner did not attach the copy, then you have to skip this part, okay? My total income, adjusted gross income on Internal Revenue Service, Form 1040 Easy, as reported on my federal income tax return for the most recent 3 years was. So in this part, you are going to list down the total income from the most recent tax return, 2nd and the 3rd. Be careful, you have to write down the exact amount on what was on the transcript. Okay. Number 25, I was not required to file a federal income tax return as my income was below IRS required level, and I have attached evidence to support this. So in this part, I am not going to click this box because my sponsor income was above the IRS required, and he also filed an income tax return. So I will skip this one. But if your petitioner income is below IRS required level and your petitioner did not file the income tax return, then you have to tick this box. In your income or the total income for you and your household from Part 6, item number 20 or 24A to C, 24C exceeds the federal poverty guidelines for your household size, you are not required to complete this Part 7. Skip to Part 8. So since my sponsor income exceeds the federal poverty guidelines, I am going to skip this part. But let me explain this for you. If your sponsor income is below the federal poverty guidelines, then your sponsor must provide an information or assets in this space provided to prove that your sponsor can support you even though his income is below the poverty guidelines. Okay? Assets from Form I-846A, Part 4, item number 3D4. So this part is for your co-sponsor. So if your co-sponsor has an asset, then your co-sponsor must provide his information in this space provided. You have to write down the co-sponsor name in this space provided. Your household member asset from for I-864A. So the household member asset of your co-sponsor must be provided in this space provided. But in my part, since I don't have a co-sponsor, then I write in A. Asset of the principal sponsored immigrant. So in this part, it's you. Okay, this is just an optional. But you have to remember, guys, in your Form I-944, you listed your assets in your household income. If you have an asset in your household income in Form I-944, then you have to write down that assets in this space provided. You must write down the asset and it must match the asset on your Form I-944. But if you did not write down the asset on your Form I-944, then you have to write down NA in this space provided. Okay, if you do not have an asset in Form I-944. The Form I-944 is a new form that was released on February 24, 2020. Okay. And number 9, add together item number 6 to 8. And enter the number here. So let's take a look on these items. So in item number 6 to 8, I write NA. So I'm going to write NA in this space provided. But let me explain this for you. Just in case, if you have written your assets in Form I-944, the newly released form, then you have to write down your assets in this space provided. Even though this is an optional, you can write your assets in this space provided so that you can prove to the USCIS that you are not subject to get a support from the government or get an assistance from the government. So if you write your assets in here, you have to calculate that assets from here and write down the total in this space provided. Okay, total value of assets number 10, add item number 4, 5B and 9 and enter the number here. So let's see the number 4 to 5B. So I write an A in this space provided because my husband's income is above the poverty guidelines. But if your sponsor income is below the poverty guidelines, your sponsor must provide an asset to prove that your sponsor can provide your financial here in the United States, can provide a financial support here in the United States. So if your sponsor provided an amount number or an assets, and that assets total from 1 to 3 is, let's say example is 2,000 US dollar, and then household members asset, if your household member or if you have a co-sponsor or someone you are joining your income, then you have to provide the amount here too. So you have to add that 425B and write the total income in this space provided. So in my part, since my husband does not required or is not required to fill out this part, so I will write an A in this space provided. So let's move on in part 8, a sponsor's contract, statement, contact information, declaration, certification, and signature. So in this part, this is your sponsor's contract, okay? Guys, I am not going to read this to you because it will consume all my time reading this to you. So your sponsor must read this contract and able to understand what your sponsor's responsibility upon filing this form or sponsoring you, okay? This part also, your sponsor must read it carefully, okay? Number 1A, I can read and understand English, and I have read and understand every questions and instruction on this affidavit and answer to every question. So I will take 1A because my sponsor can understand English and he understands all the question in this form. But if you have interpreter or your sponsor has an interpreter, then the sponsor must take this one. Or if the sponsor has a preparer or someone prepared this form for your sponsor, then they have to take number 2. A sponsor's contact information, the telephone number of your sponsor, mobile number of your sponsor, email address of your sponsor, a sponsor declaration and certification. So in this part, your sponsor is declaring that all the information that he has or she has written in this form are true and correct. That all the document that he is providing for this form are true and not purged, okay? Your sponsor signature and the date when your sponsor signed this form. So since my sponsor does not have an interpreter, I'm going to write an A in this space provided. But if your sponsor has an interpreter, your sponsor must provide the interpreter full name, interpreter's mailing address, interpreter's contact information, interpreter's certification, and the language that the interpreter uses to interpret this form to the sponsor, interpreter signatures, and the date when the interpreter signed the form. Part 10, contact information, declaration, and signature of the person preparing this affidavit in order if other than the sponsor. So if your sponsor has a preparer, then you must write the information of that preparers in this space provided. Mailing address, contact information, preparer statement. If your preparer is not an attorney, then the preparer must tick this box. If your preparer is an attorney and an accredited representative, then your preparer must tick this box. Preparer certification, preparer signature, and the date when the preparer signed this form. Part 11, additional information. So in this part, you are going to write the additional information that is not up, that did not fit in the other form above. Okay, so that will be all, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos and tutorial. God bless and good luck with your application.